What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today I'm going to be talking about predators of a particular type in the California prison system and in the modern era. If you're not exactly sure what kind of predators I'm talking about, stay tuned and it'll become clear to you as we go on. So I have some specific stories, right? I have some instances and some details and some names and whatnot. But before I get into that, let me just make a couple quick points. Uh, some of this information I've had since I was in prison, right? I was on the yard with when things happened to individuals and various consequences, but that wasn't within my group segment. And and so the reason I never touched on this in part is because I didn't want it to come across like some type of favoritism or, oh, he's just dogging these cats, and doesn't want to expose the folks that he rocked with. And that wasn't the case. I just didn't have any real substance to add. And so I stayed away from it. Um, it's been talked about on some other prison channels, generally in a joking way or with older cats that was doing time in the 60s and 70s. And it's odd, man, because it seems something that a lot of subscribers are very interested in particular those who have not been incarcerated. And some, I think, from other states, because I know other states operate differently, just the dynamics necessarily than California. Um, and not a lot of channels touch on the subject, and I think there's a lot of reasons for it. And like I said, I've hesitated too, but nonetheless, I'm gonna get into it today. And the reason is this: I'm not taking a laughing approach, or this is not just sensational stuff, right? Again, yeah, there's some stories, but there's a message here, as with everything that I try to create for this channel, right? There's definitely a lesson here, and there's some perspective, and hopefully some clarity. I know when I was coming up, and even early on in prison, and really even since throughout my time, even after learning of some isolated situations, my belief was that if any of that predatory behavior happened, it would only really happen with whites and blacks. And I don't mean that as a race issue whatsoever. I don't mean that whites and blacks are more into that behavior than raza is, right? But because of the dynamics in prison, a white person or a black person can come through there and really have no real defense, right? Besides themselves. Maybe there was a square, maybe whatever, they just kind of slipped through the cracks. And so that could put them in a position to be preyed on by their own people, and really who they're going to turn to protect or help them, right? I didn't think that could happen with the North and the South, because sort of by definition, the notion of being up under either one of those, Mexican, Chicano, raza identities is that you're not alone, that in fact you are protected to a degree, right? And there's expectations in return, but so even if you weren't a gang member on the streets, even if you weren't rocking like that, you come through and you got that Northern Hispanic or that Southern Hispanic label, and you fall up within a pretty disciplined and organized operation, right? Whether you like it or not. And that activity is specifically frowned upon in writing, along with just sort of conventional wisdom, by the North and the South. And so clearly I was wrong, to be honest, and that'll become more clear in a second. And so yeah, that's why I'm addressing this now, and the approach that I'm taking. And I'm outside and it's cold, but I got my grandkids inside, and it's not really a conversation that I desire them to overhear. So anyway, let's go. 2000, I'm in Salinas Valley on AR, and I worked in the kitchen, and there was a wood that worked in the kitchen with us, and he was light, like pale skin, red haired dude, and his eyes were like sunk in, big black rings around him. And like an addict, sort of, except he didn't conduct himself like an addict. He didn't have any of the mannerisms of anybody that's strung out on any substance, to be quite honest. And he always had a very vacant look in his eye, and he did what he was told. He was a good worker. He was kind of slow. Uh, didn't talk really. You could talk to him, and half the time he wouldn't necessarily realize that you were talking to him. He was just kind of in a perpetual daze. And when he did catch that you were talking to him, he looked at you, he had this really odd smile. He was soft spoken, very submissive, to be honest. And some of this came into clarity later. Obviously, nobody, we didn't have any idea what was going on with him. There wasn't a lot of conversation. He was a wood, I'm a norteño, so we didn't really have a lot to talk about outside of work stuff, and he was just kind of in his own. So one day he doesn't come to work, right? And this is level 4 yard, right? It's 270. This is level 4 yard though. And one day he doesn't come to work. And then we wind up hearing from the free staff and then the CO that they snatched up him and his celly because his celly had been preying on him for an unknown period of time. Now, I never saw this dude on the yard, ever. The only place I ever saw him was at work. Doesn't mean he never came out, but we had mandatory movement. So we was on the yard all the time. And I never noticed him out there. Probably why he was so pale. And I don't know who his celly was. I have no idea. But his celly got snatched up. And that kind of fits into the narrative that I understood, right? Which is just kind of stuff could happen to white dudes, because if you're a nobody and somebody comes for you, who you gonna turn to, And apparently, kind of find out he had been on the phone, I believe, with somebody, right? The prison phone in the building, and had told them that something was happening, and they didn't catch it right away because, for those that don't know, the tower cops in the building, the control cops, they can listen in on calls, but they don't listen in on calls that come from within that building. They listen into the calls in other buildings, right? And then there's COs in other buildings that are listening to the calls that happen in yours. And so maybe it took them a little while to kind of catch it or put the pieces together, but nonetheless, they came in and snatched him up, and he acknowledged what had been happening to him, and his celly got rolled up. I'm assuming the celly went to the hole. I don't know what happened to the kid. But so that's one situation. I was like, damn. But again, I compartmentalized it. Just, that's what you get for rocking with that team, and to be honest, there was a lot of behavior from Woods when I was in prison that I would look and be like, glad I don't rock with y'all. You know what I mean? I picked the right team, so to speak. In hindsight, there's no teams to pick. I don't advocate that stuff, but the culture that they operated with in prison was a foreign way of being to me, from what I've seen from the outside. And so fast forward not too long, like a month or two maybe, and there was a lot of Southsiders on the yard. Salinas Valley, even though it's located in Salinas, outside of Salinas, it's a Southern prison, right? There's a lot more buses coming from down south filling up that prison than from up north. And so there was a gang of Southsiders on the yard, very few Northerners. And I've talked about that a little bit before. But everything was 50-50, everything was equal, everything was cool, right? We had a copacetic relationship. And so Southsiders get at me one day and they say, hey man, we're gonna lay the yard down. Cool, appreciate it. Just a normal sign of respect, right? The assumption when a group says that is that they're gonna do a removal in-house, and so and that was the case. Now, there was 2 Southsiders on the yard that were Black, at least part Black. I think one of them was completely Black. I could be wrong. And the other one looked like he could be mixed. These are just assumptions on phenotype, right? But people look like it. And so the lighter one, so to speak, he tall dude, in good shape. And he didn't have a position of authority on the yard, best as I could tell. I think his bloodline had something to do with that, to be honest. but he did have influence. He was an influential person. He'd been around a little bit, and it seemed that cats communicated with him and followed him, and he appeared to be well respected by the other Southsiders in the yard. The other dude was darker skinned. I think he was a little bit younger, and he was more just kind of a heavy set guy. And he too seemed to kind of function just fine. If there was a totem pole, I would think that he was in an inferior position to the other black dude, but who knows? And there was this other Southsider cat, and he was pigeon-toed, right? His toes were in like this when he walked. Um, I'm assuming some, from birth type of thing. And I don't know how his mental faculties were. I never talked to him, but definitely physically he was at a disadvantage. And so reminds me of the type of person that he was probably just from Southern California and got tagged as a Southern Mexican, but really wasn't about all that in the streets. But I mean, who knows, right? He didn't seem to garner much attention at all. Like he was just there. And so we're sitting on the yard and we're on our side of the yard, right? Obviously. And there's only a few of us, like literally, there's just a few of us. And so I don't know who they're gonna move on, right? I don't know who the target is. That's not my business. But these two black sureños are walking the track together. And they're starting to come around to our side of the yard, right? Which is not, it's not bad, right? You walk the track all the way around. We do the same thing. So there was nothing really alarming about that. And it was just the two of them. There was nobody trailing them. There was nothing else. And they're talking, right? They're having a conversation. Can't hear what they're saying. All of a sudden, the shorter black dude turns around and cuts the taller one in the neck. Now, it was a scratch, right? Fair enough, it was a scratch. Like it was bleeding. It didn't look like he was really trying to take the dude's wind. But he left a mark, and then he turned and walked away. He walked across the grass and was fairly close to us, and I was not happy. And kind of walked off. He had a cup in his hand with some water in it. Looks like he put some water over the blade. He just moseyed on about his way. And I'm tripping because this dude is hit, he's bleeding, and he's 10 feet from us, right? Now that's not appropriate. There's a lot of issues that could go wrong there, right? If he comes walking over by us and that's when the COs realize that he's been hit, now we're getting snatched up, right? And we're getting locked down because the assumption is going to be that it was a gang issue. If he comes and takes you, he might come and want to take off on us as like a leave in some glory or whatever. Who knows? But when you do a removal, you have a responsibility to contain all of that in-house. And I was a part of some removals in Salinas where it took some extra work to make sure that was the case, but we always did. So I was pissed, right? But I'm not gonna jump up and confront anybody in that moment. Like this fool just whacked this fool, so I'm just watching. And I had a couple homeboys right there. I was like, look, bro, if that dude steps on the grass over here, rush him, just rush him. So that we don't all get snatched up. And he didn't. And he didn't look surprised that he got hit. You know what I mean? You would think somebody would be kind of solid, like, damn, fool. And there was no cleanup. There was nobody to come to put hands on him. Nothing. He just got cut, Dude that cut him walked across the yard like nothing. And he turned around and started walking back over towards the Southsiders. And he stayed on the track until he was a couple buildings away from us. And then he cut across the grass. And he cut across the grass. The center complex, let's say, is on this side. It's actually reversed. But let's say the center complex is on this side. And then all the buildings are here, right? So we're on this side of the yard. They're on that side of the yard. He gets hit. and he starts walking around the buildings and then cuts across the grass and beelines for the Southsiders table. And I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be interesting. Like, did they just hit him as a discipline? I don't know how the fuck he's gonna cover that up and not get caught, right? And he had a little washcloth in his hand and he just, you know, kind of patted his neck a little bit, but he wasn't making a scene. And he walks over there and it was like a bomb went off, right? Like a bomb scare. All the Southsiders that were sitting and grouped around the table, and they grouped up thick. Like for us, we would never group up more than like two people, right? Two here, three there. You know, we didn't stay in a big group because there was only a few of us, and that makes us vulnerable to get taken off the yard in one swoop, right? But the Southside didn't have that concern. They were thick as hell. So there's a gang of them around the table, standing there, and there always was, right? There was always a lot of people. They all walk away. The only one left sitting there is the dude with the pigeon toes, right? And this fool commenced to beating him, unlike most beatings I've seen in prison, and I've seen a few. And I mean, he's knocking him out with one hit and waking him up with the next, and just laying in on him. And the dude is bouncing. He's sitting on a bench facing the table, and he's just literally like hitting the side of the bench, each side just like a weeble wobble, boom, boom, boom. And they yard down everything, and he's just on a pow, pow, and nobody's getting involved. Everybody's just standing around at a good distance, but everybody's just standing around like, whoop. The COs rush, they spray. Finally, he lays down. They bring the ambulance to the gate. They put him on stretchers. And the first person that they get up out of there is the one that got hands put on, the pigeon-toed dude, right? Then they get the fool that was whacked. And they're off the yard. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, that was fascinating, right? And I get at the Southsiders because I was upset at how it went down. You know, what happened with them was not my business, of course, but it was my business in the sense of, bro, you can't just cut people on our side of the yard and wander off and leave them. You know, like, that's a common sense security breach. You know, I mean, it's not cool. And so I'm communicating with this guy about this. And he's like, there was no issue. There was no concern for that, Raz. We had it. And I was like, what if he rushes our group? He's like, he wasn't going to rush your group. Everything unfolded exactly as we planned. So I apologize for that being so close to you, but there was no risk. And I'm sitting here like, so that means the hit was obviously intentional, but you knew or expected that he was going to walk back over. I can't interrogate the dude because their business is not my business. I needed to get my point across. And frankly, I wasn't, if he'd have been disrespectful, then yeah, we'd have probably kicked it off. He was respectful. I still didn't like what happened, but the numbers were so lopsided and nothing actually came of it. Right, the concerns of what could have happened didn't happen, right? We didn't take any L's. So I didn't like how it went down. But if we get off on those dudes, we lose the yard, no question. You know what I mean? We're gonna leave some marks, we're gonna leave our footprint, but we're gonna leave the yard too. And that's not something worthy enough to do that, right? In my opinion, that was my view. So we let it go. I'm back in the kitchen. I'm working with folks in the kitchen. And there were some Southsiders in there. It was actually Southsiders that got me the job to work in the kitchen at Slaney's when I first pulled up. And so I was the only Northerner that had a cool job out of everybody. But we're talking to them, and what they said was that dude was preying on his cellie. His cellie was a pigeon-toed one. The one that got hit had been preying on him. It was kind of known that something was going on in the cell of some sort, but nobody really tripped or cared. And pigeon-toed dude and I don't say that to be disrespectful. I don't even know his name. Um, the African, the two Southsiders involved, the one that was preying on him, and then the one who whacked that guy. I'm 99% sure of their names, but not 100. So I'm not gonna put that out there. But if you were around Salinas, 99, 2000, you know, then you should know, right? Maybe early 2001, I don't know. But yeah, apparently the one who got hit had been preying on his celly. Um, and his celly pushed the issue, and it got to the point to where they had to do something about it. They didn't necessarily want to, but they had to, because that behavior is not acceptable, right? It's not supposed to be acceptable. And so, but the guy who hit him, they sent the other Southsider that had a similar bloodline to him, but they were cool. And apparently that dude was kind of giving the rundown on the walk. Look, bro, we got to deal with this. This is how it's going to get dealt with. But you can get your runbacks basically with this individual. And so that was a talking they were doing supposedly on the track, and why there wasn't really a concern that he was going to react any differently than he did. They expected him to go rush that table, and he just walked over there, but they expected him to go get off on that dude. And I guess I don't know the intimate details of it, but that was some type of a concession, basically, right? We got to do this, but you can go ahead and, right? And I'm imagining the thought is at that point, look, you're removed, you're whacked. So technically what you do after you're whacked is not on us. I don't know. Seems shady to me, right? The whole situation seems shady to me. Now, that's the situations I know of from my experience in prison. I was around a select handful of dudes that were from the north, some with some status, some without, who would sex play or they would talk about. There was one, Big Mike from Salinas. He got pulled as a hermano, one of the stupidest things ever done. But he got pulled as a bro. I'm sure his career is over by now. And he talked about doing time in the 80s, I believe. And if you got caught engaging in such activities, not predatory, but possibly consensual, they would actually send a memo to your house, right? Or to your next of kin or your whatever. They would send a memo saying that you had been caught engaged in that. And I guess it was some type of thing in case you was catching diseases or something. I don't know all the details. Maybe somebody, it seems like something before my time. So maybe somebody else in the comments or whatever can touch on that. But he talked about, yeah, man, my mom hit me up and was like, oh, I got a letter. And was you pitching or catching? And I'm pitching. And I'm looking at him like, man, that's odd, right? But and there was another dude who was open about his interest in being with some of the punks on the yard. And I use the word punks because that's the language that we use. I'm not trying to put down gay folks or homosexuals or whatever. Do you, whatever floats your boat. I'm 100% against predatory behavior. Absolutely. But consensually, go do whatever you want. But there's not supposed to be room even for that consensual stuff within these groups. And so, anyways, over the last few days, I've been having some conversations with some people. And I know there's another channel that had put out some stuff about Bad Boy, Bernias, right? And rumors about him. Now I've talked to like 3 people who don't communicate with each other, who have all confirmed it. I mean, folks that was sold up with him, folks that was his neighbor, and yeah, they weren't just rumors. He had an established track record. And apparently while he was in the Bay, the thought is that that he probably had the most cellies who checked in of anybody else. His cellies never lasted long. They'd go to medical and just disappear. And you think about that, and he was into horseplay. And I talked to somebody that was selling. He was like, man, he'd horseplay and sell and stuff, but he ain't never crossed those lines. Um, but then also folks that was his neighbor and heard conversations in an event and all sorts of things. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that because I don't think the details are necessarily relevant. The point is he was preying on people, and um, and you think about that, man, like he was leveraging his status and his reputation to take advantage of young soldiers, right? If you want to put it that way. And imagine how powerless that they felt, right? I'm reminded of that white dude in the kitchen. And I just imagine people coming into prison like, hey, I'm a Norteño, I'm a Northerner, I'm a homeboy. And you get to get set up with an NF member, you know what I mean? And you're like, this is shit, bro. This is the cream of the crop. These are the most righteous that there are, blah, 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 blah. And that fool takes your manhood. What you gonna do, right? And Bad Boy was he was no weaning from the shoulders or whatever, right? So, odds are a lot of these cats wouldn't have been able to physically defend themselves in a cell anyways. And then who you gonna complain to? To the NF? An NF member just preyed on you. What are they gonna believe? Who are you compared to him, right? And it's a horrible situation on so many levels. And while I don't advance any organization's agenda, I got my own. It's the homie agenda. Help others move in excellence. Period. Point blank. That's all it is. As somebody that used to fall up under that umbrella, I was never a C, as I've said many times. I was an hermano. But it's disgusting to me, even in hindsight, that folks were taking advantage of that way. And it's disgusting that anybody did it to anybody, to be quite clear, no matter the era, the 70s, 60s, 90s, 2000s, it's all ridiculous. It's all disgusting. It's all inexcusable behavior. But to hear that people who fly up under the umbrella that you so eagerly ran around with were doing this to people like this is wild. It's just wild, and it's sad, and it's scary, because people knew. This was no secret. People knew about this behavior. I know of other C's that that have engaged in these behaviors, and they're still in good standing. And sometimes it's been consensual behaviors with one another, which I suppose if it's consensual, right? Whatever it is. But now, you got a lot of these dudes that's getting kicked back out to the main lines. And there's a lot of drugs floating around, and there's this and there's that. And I feel for folks in the system right now. I would assume a lot of them believe just like I believe. This can't happen to us, quote unquote, right? We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, Nah, bro, you do. And that in and of itself, if for no other reason, stay the hell out the prison system. You know what I mean? Because it can happen to you. It is happening to people now. Now in 2022, it's happening to people. You got some folks in very high positions of leadership that there's running jokes about them within these circles. Oh yeah, man, that's just how he gets down. You gotta watch out for that one. No. And the behavior is not being stopped. You gotta do Casper. He wasn't a C. You gotta do Casper from Sanho, Michael Fredrickson. And he was damn near killed in the Bay by a C, Rudy, I think Rudy Chavez out of Tulare County or something. stabbed him, over on the seaside in the Pelican Bay Zoo. Damn near killed him. Now there were cellies. He got popped for it, so it's not as if I'm exposing somebody to attempted murder charges, right? Um, this is well known, and Casper was hit because of his activities in the county jail and taking advantage of somebody in the county jail, and so it does happen within these groups. It does happen within the North. It does happen within the South. And people, there's gonna be people in the comments, I guarantee, nah, bro, that shit's disgusting. How dare you? Nah, fool, you tripping. We don't get down like that. You might not get down like that, but be careful when you say we. That's one thing that I've learned through my time in prison and in my time outside of prison. You better watch that we word. We meaning who? Because if you're saying we meaning everybody up under this northern umbrella, don't, then you're lying. If you're saying we meaning everybody up under this southern umbrella, you're lying. You are. You can't say we. You can say you don't engage. You can say the people that you know, you're pretty sure don't engage. But it happens. And based on what I'm hearing, I'm imagining it's happening more because of these folks getting kicked out the SUIT, because of people so eager to be, one of the top guys and the cream of the crop, because of the drugs that's out there, because of the manipulation and the mind game, and it's, these fools are predators, right? And even the ones that ain't booty bandits, there's still a predatory element to engaging in these top level organizations. It's just by definition, that's how it works. And so there are some that are purists, so to speak, and do not view their role as one of being predatory, but rather as one of as being a protector. And shout out to those people. But you are a minority within your own organization. Let's just be real. And um, and so that's something for others when you're looking at these groups to take into consideration, man. Like I said, there's a lesson to be learned here, and this stuff is happening, and don't be a fool. And now the flip side of that is guaranteed CDC knows about some of this, right? Guaranteed. And there's a history on a different level. There's a history, man. There's been rappers that have a long history of charges, right? That type of predatory stuff, but underage relationships, that sort of thing, which are also disgusting, abnormal, unacceptable, and on paper is career ending. But there's people that had those charges and they still got their careers, right? Because they make money, because they're related to people, because they're just well liked. Because hey, you know what? Guys will be guys, man. Stuff happens. You know how these broads are. No, no. There's guys will not be guys like that. Like that's not normal male behavior. Um, and it's not acceptable and it's not okay. Uh, I got two daughters, man. And I felt this way before I had daughters. I got sisters, I got, a mom, and um, do you play that boys will be boys shit with me? No, it's because then men will be men and come for your helmet, right? But in these locked in environments, in these abnormal environments, in prison is an abnormal environment, what you gonna do, right? And so it's sad. It's sad, but it's reality. And again, I don't think it's a laughing matter. It's not a joking matter. It's just something to be aware of. And again, in case you don't have a reason to not get yourself caught up in the mix and whatnot, well, if nothing else appeals to you in terms of why you sing, then maybe this will. Because you wind up in a cell with somebody with some status, and they come for you like that, you're in a no-win situation. Absolutely. Because assume you can physically overpower them and prevent the act from actually happening, which is possible. right? Um, so let's assume that happens, but you're done. You're you might as well lock it up, right? Just lock it up right there. Bang on the door and then I gotta go. Because you're gonna get killed. You can't just get off on somebody with status. Who's gonna believe you? Right? Um, the odds are slim. I mean, see, Casper had allegations from the county and they was chirping and everything else all the way through Quentin. He's in the thumbnail in the blue jacket, right? That's in Quentin in the 90s, in the hole. And and there was, talk of maybe this happened, maybe it didn't. We don't know. We're kind of looking into it, and then finally somehow or another it sort of got confirmed, I guess, or whatever. But you, if you do succeed in protecting your manhood, your whole world still gets shattered because what you thought you was rocking with ain't rocking with you, and now your career is over. And so, and if you don't, then you gotta wake up and look yourself in the mirror as somebody that's been victimized that way, right? And so it's just disgusting, horrible, man, and it's a no-win situation. So stay out of prison, you ain't gotta worry about it. Anyways, this is the homie hangout, man. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Check out the other content and like, subscribe, share, whatnot. You guys have a good one.